Hey everybody, welcome back to Help Solve the Case. We are here reviewing Broken Plea about the Bryan Kohberger case written by Christopher Whitcomb. We are in the middle of chapter 7. We are talking about all kinds of things, defense and what they didn't do and what they did do. And in this section, we're talking about some of the motions and some of the things that were filed. And we're going to go through, we've been asking, if you've been following, what about Lakeland? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that, other witnesses, and again, things they paid attention to and things they didn't. So thanks for being here, and let's get to it, okay? So in the last episode, we talked a little bit about the court system and we talked about motions and things that they filed. And the big question right now, we're almost halfway through the book, to me, seems to be, and the questions you guys have, we had a great live. The questions you all have is, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And Christopher Whitcomb here has the question about, why didn't they pay attention to this? We're talking about the defense. We're also talking about information from the prosecution shared with the defense. And, it's kind of like we're all playing Monday morning quarterback here, but I would have done things different. We're trying to get into the mind of not only the defense attorney and Taylor, but Bryan, because the question seems to be on everybody's mind. Why would he plead? Why would he plead? Okay, now, I don't know. It's an interesting question. Lots of questions. Okay, so one of the motions, we were talking about motions in limine prior to court, okay, prior to the trial. And one of the things that Whitcomb focused on was the motion about the bushy eyebrows, right? Some things that to us seem frivolous because we don't have access to the entire case file, all right? And we talked about them in the last session. I believe it was the last session or the one before, the use of the word psychopath and the bushy eyebrows. So Massoth here is, let me find out exactly who that is. Eliza G. Massoth of Defense Attorney Taylor's office, okay, was assisting apparently in these pleadings, okay? So it says, when describing the intruder to Officer Nunes at the scene, remember way back in the very, very, very beginning, Massoth describes about what Mortensen said. Quote, she described the height, build, and clothing of the intruder. Her description did not mention eyebrows. And so we're saying, okay, eyebrows, what it sounds like in reading this is that eyebrows apparently became a focal point for the prosecution. And where did that come from? Remember, we talk about that probable cause that comes along and gets stitched together about the identification all throughout the process. And when did that come together? When did that become the thing? And the defense is trying to question things and get rid of things, okay? Like the sheath and statements and things of that nature. So the defense here, while it sounds maybe petty or frivolous, they're trying to get rid of this eyebrow thing, okay? And what are they arguing? What are they saying? And why are they saying it? Now, Whitcomb says here, this is important, this description that Massoth made referring to Dylan's initial statements that it did not mention eyebrows, okay? And that's true. Like when you're talking about what did you see, you're not going to hone in on everything. Maybe if you're a law enforcement officer or something, you're going to know that you're going to need a lot of details, and you're going to know the details that most people don't focus on. So you're going to pay special attention, or you're going to pay special attention to really identifying physical features, okay? But the layperson, they're just going to tell you, okay? But it makes a little more sense once we continue on here. But Whitcomb is right here. He says this is important because initial reports are usually the most accurate, and Nunez's body camera recorded every word. What seems harder to understand is why Taylor, defense attorney, thought a terrified 19-year-old co-ed would immediately mention eyebrows as the foundation of her story. Now, we got a two-parter here. So yes, we like to believe that fresh information is the best. I mean, and we can observe this in our daily life, right? You know, what did you have for dinner 2 weeks ago? You don't know, but you can hopefully remember what you had for lunch. You can hopefully remember what happened 8 to 12 hours ago and what would stand out to you. Now, that is something that we focus on, right? It should be fresh, given, well, and that might affect it, carrying through it, trauma, alcohol, and things of that nature. Because if it gets diluted, it gets diluted, okay? Now, the other thing here is that Whitcomb is asking here, why would Taylor think that a co-ed would immediately mention eyebrows as the foundation of her story? And this is what I think is interesting, just talking about Whitcomb, right? Because remember, we've talked about Whitcomb's blasting, I guess you could say, or his questioning of the reports about Nunez and these folks. Why didn't they note in the report the knife sheath? Remember that from the bed? Why did they not mention it? He harped on that for quite a bit. And I tried to explain the perspective and the focus and what was going through the officer's mind. Again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just trying to use my experience and my knowledge over all the years of what the officer's role and responsibility was at that time. So I find it a little ironic here that now he's saying, why would Taylor expect her to mention eyebrows? Well, he expected Nunez to mention the sheath. Okay. Was Dylan Mortensen terrified, traumatized, freaked out? Probably. Was Nunez that he thinks he's going on a medical call for drunk co-eds and sees a bloodbath? Could be. Okay. You know, Nunez was focused, I believe, on the life-saving. I don't know. That's a question for him. But I just think that that's very important here. Now, they also talk about, the author also talks about when Dylan Mortensen was interviewed at the police department, Detective Mowry asked about specific facial features. And remember, we have this reported weird mask kind of thing going on the suspect. And Dylan was asked if she knew what color the intruder's eyes were. And she said, no, not the color of the eyes or the eyebrows. And she said, this is verbatim here from the book, quote, everything was kind of blurry, ... Like I don't fully remember it. So she didn't remember it right then. So how is she, if that's the quickest, closest point in time, we talked about, I believe in the beginning of this, eyewitness testimony and how fallible it can be based on a number of factors. So if she can't remember it, then how is she going to remember it or be more accurate later? Just a question. And during this interview, Mortensen mentioned she was in and out of it because she was so tired. Now, is she in and out of it at the house because she was so tired? Or is she in and out of it at the interview with the police because she's so tired? We don't know. We don't know. Okay, moving further along, Whitcomb says that Dylan's statements changed over time. Okay, and now he's referencing a November 17th statement 4 days later. Okay, where Detective Gooch interviewed Dylan, and Dylan apparently, it's a little worded here, Dylan indicated that she was really asleep and probably very drunk when she woke up around 4 a.m. Throughout the interview, and this is Whitcomb's, this is Taylor's recitation, Ann Taylor, the defense attorney's recitation, potentially in the pleading, I'm not sure, of what happened during Detective Gooch's interview of Dylan 4 days later. Okay. So this is Taylor quoting Dylan's interview. I want to make sure we got all our parties correct. So Taylor writes, throughout the interview, DM expressed uncertainty about what she heard and saw and did not know if it was real or if it was a dream or if her mind was playing with her. So, Desiree hearing, attack, how is that identification going to withstand it? With alcohol, with sleep deprivation, right? You all probably seen enough shows talking about interrogation, confessions, right? What is the state of the person at the time? Were they in there for hours and hours and hours? Were they sleep deprived? Were they food deprived? Whatever, okay? And this is things that cops know. You need to ask as a cop. You need to ask if people are incapacitated in any way, so you can assess the validity, inappropriateness of their statements. Sometimes, in the midst of horrible things, you have to get something. But you also need to provide the, should we say, context of what was going on at the time. Okay? Maybe, and again, I haven't seen the recorded body cam. We haven't gotten there yet. But maybe Dylan was hesitant to explain to the officers how drunk she was. Happens all the time that people, and I'm not talking about suspects, I'm talking about witnesses, only give a portion of the information because they're afraid of being judged, of getting in trouble, of things going in the police report. I mean, I can go on and on. All right. So they feel that there's consequences or something. Okay. So moving on, this is, again, Taylor's notes of what happened with Dylan. Okay, this is about the bushy eyebrow identification. Taylor writes, law enforcement took pictures of DM's room on November 13, 2022 and November 19, 2022. On the walls in her room were many pictures of eyes with prominent eyebrows, many of which she had drawn. Some of the eyebrows are heavy, voluminous, puffy, or perhaps subjectively bushy. According to Detective Lake, he found, quote, artwork of human figures with an emphasis upon the eyes and eyebrows were pinned to corkboards. So what does this mean? Now, I want to tell you some things, but let me talk about what Whitcomb says. So Whitcomb says Masseth, again from defense attorney's office, was trying to insinuate doubt. But he says, Whitcomb says, understatement fails the objective. Photographs clipped from magazines and posted on Mortensen's wall feature prominently bushy eyebrows on 7 different faces. Okay? Also, there's women with similar features. And there's a cork board in the second floor bathroom showing more of the same. So he says, apparently eyes were a thing at 1122, meaning the house. But Masseth's assertions were just the foundation for a broader legal assault. Okay? Now, what I want to say here is we talked about bias, right? We talked about things that people intentionally can try to prejudice. We talk about things that have happened all in our personal life, even cops cases. Like if every, and this is just a random thing, if every case that you see is a homicide, you might be less inclined to believe initially that it's a suicide. You might be more hesitant, and hesitant is not the right word. Like your first theory might be homicide. And I'm not talking about how you're taught to investigate a case. I'm talking about initial reactions, right? Like the first thing that crosses your mind is going to be, right? Zebras, okay? So because she seems to, we don't know if anybody asked her, she seems to have a fascination with eyes and eyebrows. So the question is, if she has a fascination, like if there was a hairdresser who does haircuts every day, a hairdresser might be able to say, it was this kind of cut or that kind of cut or a professional style or a blah, 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 blah. Because they see hair every day. So Dylan, intentional or not, because there's a focus on eyebrows, she apparently likes eyebrows or whatever is spurring this desire to paint or draw these eyebrows and eyes, might more easily be attuned to, oh, cool, cool, not in this case, cool eyebrows, but, right? Recognize Bushy more so than others. Okay? We don't know. All right. So they're talking about Manson Biggers. Let's see who this is. Masseth. This is either Math. I don't know why I can't say that name. Sorry, guys. Masseth's motion. That is a tongue twister. Try to say that 10 times. Oh my God. I'm going to give up. The motion. Okay. They're applying this Manson Biggers balancing test and coming to the conclusion that there's no reliable witness identification. They're saying that Dylan only had an opportunity to view seconds at the most. She was influenced by alcohol and sleepiness, and the only identifying attributes are height in relation to her own. Like for me, everybody is taller than me almost automatically. It's very rare. A skinny athletic build and a bushy eyebrow. These general descriptors could fit millions of individuals. Okay. We don't know if it's dark. What if it was dark in there and there were no lights on, which would be normal at 4 a.m, right? So Whitcomb says that he finds it hard to believe that if the case had gone to trial, Bill Thompson would have reached this low to make his case. That's his words. That relying on the bushy eyebrow is what I believe he's saying. He says Kohberger had a considerable number of identifying features that distinguish him from other potential suspects. Height and weight may not have singled him out, but his nose might have. If Mortensen only saw one eyebrow, it was likely because his head was turned, meaning he appeared in profile, which makes it even harder, right? So, and he says here, right here, he agrees with me. It seems plausible that Ann Taylor could have refuted Morton's identification based on his profile alone. Have you ever seen somebody from the side and you think it's somebody, and then you walk up or they turn your head and you're like, oh, okay, I was wrong. Okay. So, that's a problem, right? He continues, he talks about when, and he uses this word, a ghoul. When a ghoul commits murder, we want to believe in the dedication and the credibility of the people we hire to find him. We want to trust that cops will be at least as competent as our heroes on TV. Let me tell you, it is not like it is on TV. We want to have faith in lawyers for both sides as they fairly present the facts in front of the judges who keep an eye on rules and decorum. Remember I talked about like the dad figure, the mom or dad figure, until the juries sort it all out. We want to hope that if we were ever accused of a crime, justice would be done in a manner we could accept. And this is the hard part, folks. Because when some bad thing happens to somebody, we want justice for that person, right? We want the full effect of justice, especially if it happens to somebody in your family or you or something. Like, we want swift justice. But at the same time, we also have to look at those constitutional protections and these things like these motions being filed and everything, that the availability is there for it if it's wrong. So again, going back to perspective. What perspective do we have here? And he says here that whatever we think about the viability of them, like whether Ann Taylor should have filed them or didn't file them, they were ridiculous or whatever you want to call it, they didn't do anything, except the only thing that she got through, is what he's saying, is the change of venue that was helpful to Bryan. He says, in each and every instance, Judge Hippler ruled against her. So does that mean the judge was biased? Or does that mean that she didn't write a good enough motion? She didn't present a good enough case law? She wasn't arguing the right things, right? I spoke about the genetic genealogy. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think she was arguing the right things. That's just me. Okay, she's the defense attorney. She's hired for that. She's got way more experience than me. But she also doesn't have expertise in genetic genealogy. Okay, so, all right. Now we're going to talk about Lakeland, who was supposedly over there at some time, at some point, watching TV. And we have a transcribed verbatim report here included by the author Whitcomb. And I will tell you, if you have not bought the book, please go and buy the book, because I'm only taking snippets of it. You need to read all this for yourself. I'm sure it will be in much better chronological. I'm going in chronological order, but you don't have me blustering in and saying all this stuff. I'm just trying to give you a different perspective, tell you whether I agree with the author's perspective, and give you my insight from all my years on the street. Okay, so here Whitcomb writes that on November 19th, 2022, Idaho State Police Detective Brady Walker telephoned, I don't like that. I like in person. Anyway, let me go. Telephonically contacted Lakeland Ashley McComas in the presence of ISP Detective Andy Hodel, maybe that's how you pronounce it. His report documenting McComas' recollection of events leading up to the crimes at 1122 King Road was filed the same date. It is transcribed. It is here transcribed verbatim. Well, where was she? I always go in person if I have the opportunity. I don't like calling. And I know, I don't know. I believe a lot of the students left. Okay. So we don't know what that situation is. Okay. So, McComas, that's her last name. She started the year before and met Madison and Zana through the sorority, Pi Beta Phi. We've heard about that. And she grew close with Kernodle. She met Kaylee in around August of 2022, so recent, and Dylan and Bethany through her sorority the year before. And they were closer after the start of the school year in August of 2022. So Dylan and Bethany and McComas had some history, okay? And again, this is the verbatim from the report. I'm just kind of picking and choosing. So McComas had visited the house at 1122 King Road at least every weekend, and described it as a party house. She would arrive at the house before other guests. The parties consisted of playing games and drinking, people mingling with each. I cannot speak tonight. I am sorry. Mingling with each other, playing beer pong, and being more relaxed than rowdy or rambunctious. People just hanging out is kind of what it sounds like. She says there were only a few occasions where McComas would go there simply to watch a movie or do something other than party. So she went for the parties. They occurred about once a week on Friday or Saturday, normally attended by 20 to 30 people. That's a lot. I mean, I don't know about the college, but that's a lot every week, okay? She says, according to this, the parties were normally attended by the same 20 or 30 people. You know, you have that, what's coming to mind is you have that house as a kid that everybody goes over to that house because the parents are cool. They just go and hang out and the mom feeds you and all that. That's kind of what it sounds like, right? That was the house. She says if somebody showed up randomly, they would not be allowed to stay. But she had not been there when somebody uninvited came. That's what I think they're trying to illustrate there. McComas also mentions a house close by where Kernodle had lived a year before, where athletes would show up if there was a party, but they were not welcome and were asked to leave. McComas texted them a picture of a map of the neighborhood and circled the residence where Kernodle lived previously. That was 1118 King Road. McComas talks about Dylan dating a male named Quinn, who lived in Boise, thought they dated for a couple years. And again, this is a summary. I'm going through this because I had the questions. We don't know when she left. We don't know what she was doing over there. We don't know what the background is. So I'm just trying to get through that. She had not met Quinn, didn't believe he had visited Moscow. Mortensen would visit him during spring breaks. Mortensen only complained about how much video games Quinn played. McComas did not believe Mortensen had a relationship with another male during this time. So, just trying to get at the players, okay? Bethany did not have a boyfriend at the time. Ethan stayed with Kernodle almost every night. McComas did not see Chapin and Kernodle that night, the night before this happened, but had seen them on Friday and described the relationship as good. Chapin was helpful to the other girls and seemed to fit in the house. McComas had met Mogan's boyfriend a couple times and had seen him at homecoming at the beginning of October. She didn't know Mogan that well and did not have deep personal discussions. McComas had not met Goncalves' boyfriend. When McComas was at the house, Goncalves was usually gone or upstairs in her room. On the night of November 12th, that's the night, before 4 a.m., it's like we would consider it the same night, but at midnight becomes a different day. McComas was at another house party with friends. She sent a picture of the location, which was at 427 Taylor Avenue. Talk about the people there. Let's see. All attendees were students. And she thought that Chapin and Kernodle were still at the Sigma Chi party. When McComas left 427 Taylor Avenue, she and Mortensen, Dylan, got a ride from a sober freshman to the house at 1122 King Road. She could not remember the make of the car. She could not remember the exact time she left the party. And she had taken videos and photographs that night and said the timestamp from the last video at 427 Taylor Avenue was at 11:54 p.m. Okay, yeah. The timestamp for the first video at 1122 King Road was 12:43 a.m. So we've got the videos being taken at 1122 King Road. So that also helps establish we've got this varying timeline, right? So she arrived with Mortensen and went to the bathroom on the main floor. I'm assuming the main floor is the second floor, okay? It doesn't say how they came into the house. So we're assuming the second floor is the main floor, the one with the living room. Okay, let me back up. Let me move forward. They entered through the front door with the keypad lock. Several other people have the front door code, and the sliding door on the main level had not been locked when she was there. So come and go as you please. She believed Bethany got home after she and Mortensen, but knew they all arrived around the same time. She was not aware of anybody else being home and stayed on the main floor the entire time she was there. After she went to the bathroom, they went to the kitchen where Mortensen made popcorn. McComas sat on the floor and played with Murph, the dog. She thought that Mortensen had let Murph out. After the popcorn was made, they went to the living room and started watching Vampire Diaries. Not much conversation. How long is that? Hour and a half, 2 hours? So now we're 12. Let's see. The last one she took there 12, 12:30, 12:30 to 1:32 a.m. Maybe we're between 1:30 2 a.m. They didn't have much conversation while watching the movie. She took several selfies and videos. It doesn't say. So we have the time from the first video, 12:43 a.m. We don't have the time from the last video. Okay, so the report says she took several selfies and videos. After leaving, she walked back to the sorority house at Pi Beta Phi at 517 Idaho Avenue. Here we go. The timestamp on the last photograph she took over at King Road was 1:33 a.m. and the first stamp from media at her sorority was 2:19 a.m. She estimated it took about 15 minutes for her to walk home. So she was gone from the King Road house at 1:33. That's what I wanted to know. And she stated that while she was there, only Dylan and Bethany were there. She left through the front door and did not see anyone of note while walking home. So did she shut the door? She said after leaving, she did not hear from Bethany or Dylan until after receiving the vandal alert. And that was something that went through the school to tell them that, something bad had happened. She does not know anybody who could have done anything. And she doesn't know anything about a stalker or anything like that. Apparently, she sent screenshots of social media and contact cards, pictures and videos. They saved them with the report, supplement 62. Okay. And let's see. So now we're back to Whitcomb. And Whitcomb says, those statements by McComas and others help police build victimologies and timelines. Very important. They added up to little more than a circumstantial composite of the case. At the end of the day, this is what Whitcomb is saying. The judge and jury want evidence. No matter what the lawyers argue, the best evidence is forensic, right? Because eyewitness testimony can be corrupted by any number of things. We talked about alcohol, bias, trauma, physical limitations. And, what was I going to say? Eyewitness testimony, and I was going to say something else. But yes, you want forensic evidence, tangible stuff that can be uncontroverted by the human condition. Okay. Oh, the bushy eyebrows and stuff. Okay. So he says, returning to the crime scene, we quickly see that therein lies the problem. Okay. So now he's bringing up Sutton and Turvey again. And he says they agreed on almost nothing about what the evidence shows. And this is crazy here, because if you're looking at a picture, you're looking at a picture of blood, okay? So yes, everybody would have to say it's a picture and it has 3 spots of blood. We've already got that issue about liquid and blood and whatever, but let's say someone's looking at a picture of 3 spots of blood. Okay, that's a fact, but the interpretation of whose was it, how it got there, what its relation to the crime, that's a whole a different ball of wax. So this is important. Let me put this here. Okay, and Whitcomb says, back to the interview with Turvey, when asked how soon after examining the K-bar sheath, he moved on to broader doubt about the whole case. Remember, he was brought in initially to look at the sheath, okay? But as soon as he looked at the sheath, remember, then he was like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. So he started looking at other things to try to work on the sheath, and then, Pandora's box opened, apparently. And he says immediately, okay? So, and this is what Whitcomb says, that the broader doubts included the manner in which Kaylee and Maddie had been killed. Remember, we heard stabbing, beating, strangling. He says the wounds were disproportionate and they were oddly symmetrical. I haven't heard that before. And he believes they could not have been caused by one knife. That's interesting. Okay. He says, once you look at the knife, this is Turvey. Once you look at the knife, you just sort of back out. Once you look at the knife, the sheath or the knife? Okay, that's interesting. It's verbatim here. I snipped the thing. Once you look at the knife and you just sort of back out, you can see one of the victims' heads was all bloody and her pillow was all bloody, but the 2 did not match as police found them. Kaylee's head had been moved after all the blood soaking ended, meaning after she was dead, and then one body was moved on top of the other. Kaylee's on top of Maddie's right arm as if they were cuddling, and then the sheet, of course, had been drawn over them. How does that happen in 4 minutes? Or what? Like, it doesn't make sense. So then Whitcomb asked what about the liquid blood on the comforter? He says, he wants to know, he writes, how is it possible that the police would have found liquid blood pooled into a porous surface, being the bed, 8 hours after the crime? Is that normal? So it sounds like what he's saying, and again, I haven't looked at the pictures, there was liquid blood on top of the mattress or in the mattress when it should have dried out. Think of a mattress like a big towel or a big piece of toilet paper, or I don't know, right? Interesting. He wants to know if that's normal. So then Turvey says there's nothing normal about a crime scene like this. He says Kaylee suffered significant injuries that led to a tremendous amount of blood, so that's not uncommon. It depends. Here's our answer. It depends on the material the comforter was made of, the type of fabric the blood pooled on. Like, was it waterproof? Could it have been waterproof? The medium of the barrier itself matters. Cotton, okay, think of a towel. Have you ever had those dish towels, and when you have a good, like you're washing dishes and you get that good cotton dish towel that it dries, and then you get those other freaky kitchen towels that are, I don't know what they're made of, but they don't dry. They're not cotton, okay? That kind of gives you an example. He says, and so maybe they're polyester. He says cotton acts differently than polyester. Me, I do wear it, but I have a problem with polyester. Polyester and I are not friends. So he says, so besides what the heck was the mattress made of, he asked what was the temperature of the house, what was the humidity, all of that stuff comes into play. Okay, so here we go. We're shifting again. I've been asking, was it dark inside the house? Were the lights on in the house? What did the house look like? Okay, because they should have found, what do you call those things? The light switch, in the up or on position. So speaking of the environment, this is what Whitcomb says. This presents the perfect opportunity to pause and talk about environmental factors which the police have seemed to have overlooked. Things like illumination, inside and outside, precipitation, which is rain or clouds or snow or whatever, ambient temperature, considering the crime scene as a whole, how quickly things dry, how, they take temperatures of the bodies, the whole thing. Now he says the kitchen door was supposedly left open for 8 hours with snow on the ground, creating questions about what was tracked in or out. Darkness could have been an issue for anyone sneaking around through the bushes. What about in the freaking house? What about in the house? Did they always leave the lights on? I want to know. How did she see him? How did she see him? So Whitcomb says, according to online sources and a weather report in the prosecutor's file, it was 28 degrees Fahrenheit at 4 a.m. It was overcast with light fog, winds 5 miles per hour out of the south with a nautical visibility of 6 miles and humidity of 89%. It's pretty moist to me. I live in the desert. It's pretty. He says the moon was waning gibbous with 82.5% relative illumination. So that seems to be good. I'd have to look at that, but that's 82.5%. It seems pretty good. But he says cloud cover would have made the early morning sky feel dark, cold, wet, and foreboding. He adds, as ring cam footage from 1112 King Road clearly shows, the killer would have found conditions just about perfect for getting in and out undetected. Okay. So he's going to talk about the blood again. Okay, he's going to zing us. It says, and before dismissing whether as superfluous to forensic investigation, remember what Dr. Turvey said about the coagulation process of blood. The temperature and humidity inside that house played a factor in how quickly Kaylee's blood dried on the comforter. Just because police may have skipped over important clues does not mean we have to. See there, zing. Okay, there we go. All right. He's going back to Officer Nunez. He says, according to Officer Nunez's body camera witness statements and published reports, the sliding glass door was found wide open. The only thermostat for the entire house was attached to a wall in the kitchen, approximately 12 feet away, I'm assuming from the door. At least one crime scene photo taken by the ISP shows the thermostat set at 69 degrees. Common sense dictates that under those circumstances, the heating system, which worked normally, would have read cold air from the outside, pumping heat for 8 hours straight. Good point. But was the heat on? Was the heat on? Did it work? Did it give up? Do we have anybody that notes that the heat was on? Is that in the crime scene report that the heat was on? Because that would affect the temperature for the medical examiner. That's a question that, you don't routinely note every house you go into, whether the air was on or the air was off. But when you have dead bodies, you do. Because the coroner's going to ask you, or the coroner team is going to check themselves. That is, you need to know. So he continues, if the main door was open, as witness Justin Nadeau claimed, the effect would have been even more pronounced. He says the heat would have been running nonstop, making the third floor, where police found Maddie and Kaylee, unbearably hot. Heat rises. Did anybody say, oh my God, it's so hot in here? No. He says, that appears not to have been the case because neither Nunez nor Warner mentioned anything about the temperature of the house, either on camera or in their reports. Neither does Detective Talbot or anyone who entered to process the scene. So that's kind of bad. But I'm telling you, I've been in some houses that that's like the first thing that you say because you are wearing a ton of stuff in the winter. You know, you have an undershirt on, you got your vest on, you should have your vest on, you probably got a long sleeve shirt on, you might have an outer carrier on, you're carrying all this garbage, you're in thick wool socks, you got your boots on, and you come in there and you hit that heat, and you know when the heat is there. Same thing as when you're riding around in your patrol car and you got that AC on and you step out into that oven and you're like, oh God. Okay, so you feel it. Now, I don't know what he's saying here about that nobody noted it in their report. That's not good. That's not good what we just talked about, right? Okay, so we've got this problem that the temperature wasn't noted. And so Whitcomb is talking to Turvey now, and Turvey is describing his theory, whatever he believes happened, right? So he's like, okay, let's stick with the bodies and see what they tell us about the crimes. High temperatures would have made the pooled blood dry much faster. Think about when you dry your clothes, you put them on heat. And when you dry your hair, you use heat. It dries faster. Okay. Have you ever put anything in the oven to dry? Right? Okay. He says, at least for now, it's natural for all these questions to come rushing in with the case where it's all so complex. But we will come back to that later, talking about the bodies. Okay. So he's going to give us his play-by-play. This is Turvey. It all starts in the third floor bedroom with Kaylee and Maddie. So we start there too. This is what Turvey's saying. Based on timeline and logic, this has to be the first place a crime occurred. They're attacked, stabbed to death right next to each other. But the idea that one woman is violently attacked and killed while the other is sleeping, that she doesn't wake up and do anything, doesn't fight back, doesn't even respond, that's nonsense. That's what Turvey is saying. So are you so drunk that you're passed out? Or, how does that happen? Because you would think, barring a locked door or something, right? Not that you want to imagine yourself in that situation, but wouldn't you be running or doing something or, defensive? Like, we don't know if there's defensive wounds or anything like that. Okay. So he says, right, nobody wakes up, doesn't do anything, doesn't fight back, doesn't even respond. They're right on top of each other in a small bed, and it's obvious that neither of them ever left the bed. So how does that happen? Have your kids ever jumped on your bed? and one parent gets up and the other parent's left in the bed with the bouncing kid, or the dog jumps in the bed and I don't know. Picture it. He says Kaylee was asphyxiated to the point where the blood vessels burst in her eyes and lips. Then she was severely beaten before being stabbed and cut dozens of times. Maddie never woke up. We're supposed to believe one killer smothered and beat and hacked at Kaylee while somehow dealing with Maddie too. There has to be a second person involved, he opined. This is Turvey. But I'm asking, as I'm reading this, what if Maddie was asleep and the killer slunk in very quietly, like a mouse, and strangled Kaylee? We don't know. I haven't seen the ME's report. Which would have happened first? The stabbing, the strangulation, the beating. But it sounds like, from what Turvey's saying, and if we've got blood vessels burst in her eyes, it sounds like the strangulation might have happened first. So what if he quietly asphyxiated her and then went over and took care of Maddie and then went back to Kaylee? What do you think? Okay. Now, Turvey, going back to what he's saying, he says to his two killer, there had to be two killers, but I don't know. I kind of described what I thought. I don't know. Again, I'm just reading this. I've never seen anything, whatever. Turvey cited the ISP reports. He said he followed the evidence. So then next, he says, once they get out of the room, they go downstairs to the second floor. They being the killers, according to Turvey. And where do they end up? Where do they arrive? In the kitchen. What happens as they get there? So Whitcomb talks about Nunez's body cam. They would have turned left, moving out of Mogan's bedroom, taking 4 or 5 steps before turning left again and walking down the fold-back stairs. He says it's plausible to think the killer would have stopped at Dylan's room when he got down to the second floor, especially if she heard him and got up to open her door as stated. Now, did that happen at that point? Was that the point? I don't believe that was the point. Wasn't the point when Zena was in the bathroom that was the point later? Was the killer or killers, according to Turvey, were they done at that point? So he continues, based on Bill Thompson's narrative, the prosecutor, in the kitchen, you have Zena eating her food. Didn't I see the food? Didn't I see a food plate in her bedroom on the floor? Somebody put a photo in the comments that there was food in there. What was the DoorDash order? What food was it? I'd like to see what was on that plate. Okay. In the kitchen, you have Zena eating her food, and she's in there on TikTok. Okay, maybe she was live streaming. And that's when she sees who it is. Turvey surmised. This is Turvey's theory. And she runs down the hallway, and the killers are covered in blood. They, Turvey's thing, have blood on their hands, blood on their clothes. They've got blood on their faces. They have their knives and whatever weapons. And we don't even know because there were no weapons recovered at the scene. But she sees them, sees the weapon, and she runs down the hallway toward Ethan to wake him up and to get help. The offender is able, I think, to get close enough to injure her, which is why we have her blood in the living room, on the walls, and some of the horizontal surfaces. I don't know. I haven't seen the TikTok in the kitchen, but I think we've talked about the bathroom. We talked about the shower. I think he got, whoever, I think he got Ethan first. I don't know about this kitchen thing. I haven't seen it. You guys have seen it, but I'm like, okay, I don't know, but I'm like, okay. He references that Zena's blood was found on the side edge of the folding white table, the beer pong table. And he says, this is Whitcomb, according to Sutton, who's the state's person, Zena was injured while fleeing to her room. See how much we have here. We have a lot here. Okay. Okay, so let me continue here. So according to Turvey, these two assailants, all bloody, come down. Oh my God, she's in the kitchen that the killer would have walked through. Remember, the DoorDash driver, Bryan was purportedly right behind the DoorDash driver who left the food, who then Zena would have been in the kitchen eating the food when Bryan or the killers or whoever would have come in. and then he would have gone upstairs and killed them and then came back downstairs and Zaina in the kitchen? Am I following that theory correctly? I don't know. So the state's position, what he's saying is that she then ran to her room, and I don't know how she got blood on the table after the fact or before the fact, or was she stabbed in the kitchen? I don't remember blood being in the kitchen. I don't know. But he says, this is Turvey. This on the beer pong table. That's either the offender tracking her blood back out after the murder, because remember they had to go sideways between the table, or leaving it as he first attacked her. Either way, she gets further attacked in her bedroom, and she gets, that's a bad word, I'm not going to say that. This is a battle where she fights hard, blood everywhere. She's stabbed and she's got defensive wounds and all kinds of injuries. Ethan was in bed. He never gets out of bed. And this is where I disagree. I think he got Ethan first. I think she was in the bathroom, hiding or otherwise, showering. Remember we talked about the hair? I'm not sure. I haven't seen the layout, but that's kind of where I'm going right now. So Turvey continues. He either wakes up, which is almost impossible. Yes, I agree. Things crashing, Zaina screaming, because remember they said the table fell over. Either he doesn't wake up, or the other offender gets in there, holds him down, and stabs him a few times, and he's done. He says, to me, Turvey, it's not reasonable to suggest that he slept through the violent, destructive, screaming murder of his girlfriend. I agree. That's why I think he got first. I think he got first. But I don't know what kind of spatter or whatever was there. I don't know. We'll see. So Whitcomb seems to agree with Turvey. He says none of this makes sense until one addresses the other important considerations. The women on the third floor both suffered what a behavioral analyst might identify as rage kill, signature wounds. Oh, this is bad. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is, I don't even want to say this. Because it's terrible. Both women, after they died, like that is, you guys, I'm trying to be as good as I can be. Like that is just horrible. It says twice. Two of those. Each of them had nearly identical gashes on one of their shoulders. Turvey says this is very interesting. It tells us a great deal about the killers. You are seeing actions play out from more than one offender. It's interesting. Okay. And then he's going to get into, he references Turvey's book and profiling. Okay. So we're going to end this here. And then we're going to move on to that in the next video. So thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing, sharing. Let me know what you think. We're going to continue to put it together. I have no idea. All right. Thank you guys. And we will see you again on the next one.